What's up, entrepreneurs? It's Lamika here with the Fruition Factor Podcast, where you can find us on the Real About Entrepreneurship. And I love YouTube, and I was on the YouTube search of how to create a content studio, and I came across this dope entrepreneur. I reached out to her, and she said yes to the invitation of coming on to the Fruition Factor Podcast. So thankful for Patrice Cameau coming on to the Fruition Factor. Welcome, Patrice. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Lamika. It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you again. Like I said, thank you so much for saying for saying yes.
Oh, great.
Um, sometimes you put yourself out there, you're like, I don't know if they're gonna say.
Got to put yourself out there all the time, right? Like,
Yeah.
how else are you going to know?
Absolutely. So I mentioned that. So I found your channel because I have several properties that I was looking at potentially turning into a content studio. And I came across your channel. I loved your energy. I loved what you were talking about. I just loved your overall vibe. And so I thought, let me reach out to you. So based off of your story, I thought you had a high fruition factor. And I was like, let's get
Love
her
that.
on and let's understand her story.
Yes,
So I guess tell us how this came to be.
absolutely. And I just want to make sure you can hear me okay.
Yes, I
Okay,
can.
perfect. So, it starts way before the space opened in 2018. I've always been a writer, I've always been a creator. Fast forward to after graduating from undergraduate school, I wanted to help my friends open, like, do their own, like, they were club promoters, and I wanted to help them with their PR. So that's kind of how communications came into play. And then I realized that a lot of the people I was helping from a PR standpoint didn't have spaces to have events. They didn't have spaces to work remotely. And in 2013 ish, I said, I'm going to open up a co work space because that's when WeWork was the vibe. Um,
Yes.
and it took some time and lots of different iterations, but all of that brought me to finally signing a lease in 2017 and opening Camp Space, which at the time when we opened, we were a co-work studio. And I'm sure we'll talk more about pivoting, but I paid attention to the numbers and what my customers needed and shifted and became a content creation studio in 2018. They didn't exist back then. And I don't say that like boastfully, but I realized that all the people that were 90% of the people coming into the space were taking photos, shooting video,
Mhm.
creating content for their businesses, and it was bringing in more money. So I shifted, and the co-work space went away. And we just said, no, we're a content studio now. And every now and then I'll still get people call asking if they can work remotely from the space.
Or do you accept them?
No, usually not.
Okay.
Not
Okay.
usually not because
Okay.
like right now we actually have a long-term production team that has rented out the space.
Great.
So,
Okay.
but then also it's not worth a $75.
Makes sense.
It just isn't worth it for the day.
Makes sense.
No,
Makes
it
sense.
costs more
Makes
to turn
sense.
the
Makes
lights
sense.
on.
You're right. You're right. You're right. Okay. So you're in Maryland. Is that where you're located?
Yes, we are in Hyattsville, Maryland, which is 5-minute drive from Washington, D.C. And that was a very strategic decision because a lot of the spaces, the co-work spaces at the time were in DC, and I lived in the suburbs. I didn't want to go to DC. I don't want to pay tolls. I don't want to be in traffic. I want to be able to quickly pick my kids up. And so I was really deliberate about finding a space that was in the suburban area because also
Mhm.
that's where my customers lived, right? These were families, these were moms, these were people who worked full-time jobs and didn't want to have to go back into the city to create if they didn't have to.
Right. Right.
So that's why I was really deliberate about being outside of the major city, but also it's so expensive in your major city. So why
Mhm.
pay $5,000 in rent?
That's true. That is true. Well, and that was I think that was a part has been a part of my thing is the area where I want to where my homes are located. It's in a small town and it's sandwiched in between two large cities, but both of those large cities kind of have the opportunity. So that's why, I'm like, I don't know. And you're still close to a major
Right.
city, but I'm like a itty bitty town
Yeah.
compared to compared to that. But I do like the fact that you tried something and you saw that that didn't work, because it's funny because that was kind of my thought process, because I'm originally from Alabama. So when I go home, I don't have anywhere to work. So one of the things that I thought about was like, oh, I need to open up a co-working
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
That has been my first thought. And then as I started to create content more, I'm like, no, I need to make this house into, I said that like 9 months ago on a video, and I was like, I think I'm going to turn this house into a content studio home. Like I literally said that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. So I like the idea that you pivoted, you looked at the numbers, and you were doing this prior to the pandemic.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother
conversation. But to go back to something that you had just mentioned, regardless if it's a big city or a small city, you have to build community. And you never know who needs your services if you're not reaching out and building community even before you have a location. And that's one of the reasons why I believe we've been successful, because it took me 2 years to find a space. And throughout that 2 years, I was having pop-up events. I was meeting with local politicians. Like, I was just putting it out there. I had a website, I had an email list. You couldn't tell me I didn't already have a space.
I love
And
it.
it was because the value of community. So when we finally opened, there were 100 people at our grand opening because they were just excited that it was finally coming to fruition.
I love that. You did everything. You were taking the steps to make sure that it happens. And I think so many times people are so focused on the end result and that being grand that they don't take the baby steps towards like what they need to do in order to get things done.
Absolutely.
What made you do that? Even though you didn't have a space, like what made you do all those other things?
I think being a communicator and, as a PR person, strategic communicator, relationships are vital. I know that if I want to get my client in the newspaper, I have to have relationships with the journalists. I want to have an event, I need to know who the people are. And so I'm always about, and this is so cliche, but it's not what you know, it's who you know. And
Absolutely.
I wanted people to come to these pop-up events. So how do you get people to come to your events? You promote it to everybody and you talk about it to everybody. Do I always have the bandwidth to do that now? Back then I had one child, now I have 3. So things have shifted.
Oh.
But you have to, part of building community is putting yourself out there, which we just talked about, right? Like if you're not, you can post to Instagram all you want, you can buy all the online ads you want, but if you aren't hitting the pavement and telling people who you are and what you want to make happen, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Relationships matter. People remember when they get an email from you. I have somebody I haven't worked with him in probably 3 years. We built a relationship just because I loved what he was doing and he loved what I was doing with the space. And he just literally emailed me yesterday about doing his 30th, I think, birthday party in the space. And then it was like, but how are you? Let's catch up. Because also the relationships and community is about people. It's not just transactional. It's not just do this, do that. For me, it was, I don't like working. I need to work remotely. Who else understands that? Let's talk about it. Let's build community around it. And now I feel like it's just I'm gonna do a picture. I'm gonna do a post on this. The picture in the open space with somebody holding their keys, right? Like that is all it's about now. And the relationships haven't been built. The community has not been built. So when you open, nobody is there. Once people get past the glitter and let me make sure I get my little Instagram pics off, be the first person to tag it. Who's showing up? Who's coming? Who are your customers? Who did you build relationships with?
Right. You are absolutely right. And you know, as you're telling that story, I'm like, you're like you're refreshing my memory because I have another brand called Height Goddess, and that brand is so much about community, especially the way I started it.
Mm.
Before I ever had a name, before I did ever did anything, Nordstrom Rack used to have these large size shoe events.
Mm-hmm.
And I would go to the large size shoe events in different cities, and I would strategically place where I needed to be, as well as what I call my street team. I would
Yep.
have them at Nordstrom Racks just talking to people.
Yep.
And like you said, I was able to build that community. So when I officially had my name and I was ready to launch the brand, I had already built a community in my mind. Duh, that didn't even ring a bell for this.
And that's the thing. It's like it's not really. It's typically not an intentional thing. It's a organic understanding the value and just doing it. But
Hmm.
at least when you have the wherewithal to know that it's important, you can think about it. Um,
Hmm.
but I do think those organic interactions, and when you are really doing it to build community versus to get $100,000 in sponsorships,
Right.
then it feels different. I think you build a community first, because once you have the relationships, then when you make the ask, it's like, oh, of
Yeah, it's
course,
easy.
yeah, they believe in
Yeah,
you.
it's yeah, absolutely, absolutely easy. So when I what obviously the selfish reason that I was thinking about creating a content studio at when I started to do the research, when I first said it, I was just like, oh, this will be cool for this area, and I'll be able to rent it out when I'm not using it. And so when I finally decided to do the homework behind it, how I found you is I was just more so looking at I need a place to record my
Mm-hmm.
podcast when I'm in
Yeah,
Alabama. But I was watching one of your videos and you was like, it's way more than, shooting a podcast. There's so much more content
yeah.
to it. So can you speak to that?
Everything is content. Everything is content. This conversation right now, obviously, when the final gets out, that's content. But
Mhm,
um, this photo, like, I could screenshot this right now
mhm,
and
mhm.
make a blog post about how to step out on faith and reach out to people you don't know, right? Like, everything is
Yeah.
content, because everything can
Mhm,
be added to a story. Content is
mhm,
really the visual representation of whatever story you want to tell, to get your audience to do whatever it is you want them to do. So, in the beginning for me, it was definitely photo shoots and videos, right? Like, that was it.
mhm,
Photo
mhm,
shoots,
mhm,
Instagram. But the
mhm,
pandemic really showed the vast breadth of content. There's over 113 types of content, from emails to text to podcasts to
mhm,
video vlogs to you name it, to white papers to case studies.
mhm.
That's all content. And listen, we've been doing it way before the word content was hot, right?
Right.
Like, it's just
Right.
now that
Right.
we have a name for it.
Mhm, mhm.
But
Yeah.
when you take yourself out of when you open your mind and remember it's not just about pretty Instagram pictures, which is what I
Mhm,
say all the time, then you
mhm,
realize, like, this is a very lucrative industry. Someone booked the space for all day this past Sunday and
mhm,
shot a short film. That's content. We've had the new various national and local news publications need to do stories on people
mhm,
that are based in our area, and they want to take it outside of the studio, so they'll rent the space and they'll just bring their whole team there. I've had
uh-huh,
reality TV shows shoot there. It's all content. But what I'm seeing is a lot of people, when they're creating these spaces, they're making it really photo heavy, like selfie museum-ish.
mhm,
And you
mhm,
cannot pitch that to a TV company, a production company,
mhm.
to a short film production team, because it looks like somebody's Barbie playhouse. It's not real. Like, this is camp. It looks
Right.
like someone's house. You
Right.
can make it anything you want. You can add whatever, you can take away, but it's so
Mhm,
clean because it's a real studio. Because a studio also, I believe, while you come there because of the aesthetic, you should be able to make it your own. And
mhm.
you see a lot of the spaces now where it's, again, just pink walls and da da, and it's just like, that looks like a 4-year-old's bedroom.
Right.
which might work for the 20-year-old influencer who is
Hmm.
promoting lashes, but how long is that revenue going to last?
Right. Right. Well, so when people are looking to do that, is that based off an aesthetic? But then let me go back to that.
Hmm.
You have a background in PR.
I do.
Okay. So in my mind, even though that's where my degree is in, I've never used
Okay.
it. Um, in my mind, is the average person, say somebody like me who wants to open a content studio, like how do I know, like, I should, oh, a news company is not going to want to do that, or someone's not going to want to shoot a short film here, because, like, what should what should we be thinking about when we do stuff like
That is
that?
such a good question. I think you have to first know who your target customer is. Who is in
Hmm.
that area within, 60-mile radius, 100-mile radius, that will actually be feasible to using your space and being your customer. You find this out when you
Hmm.
build community, by the way.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
once you have an idea of who these people are, it might be a higher concentration of photographers. So that means your space needs to be photographer friendly, right? White walls, natural light. But maybe it's not that. Maybe you are really close to a lot of TV production companies, because also every area doesn't have that. Again, I'm in the DC area. We're a
Hmm.
national hub for everything, obviously, the nation's
Everything.
capital. So
Hmm.
we're going to get those looks anyway, right? Um, but that might not be the case for a
Hmm.
small town in Alabama. Mind you, they all have news companies, right? Um,
Hmm.
so, of course, like you said, I knew that, but I also say a lot of those opportunities I did not seek. They, again, were a part of
Hmm.
my community. They were on
Makes
our
sense.
email list. We were following them on Instagram and they were following back. And so now they knew who we were, the space was.
Hmm.
They had possibly just Googled DC studio and we came up, right? Social search engine optimization. So it's not always going to be that direct pitch.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's like making sure you've put your stamp in all the different parts. This is marketing to make sure people know about you. There've been a lot of times
Hmm.
people have, and listen, you also don't have to be hundreds of thousands of followers. Camp Space, and I'm just talking Instagram right now, we have 6,500 followers. This is not like,
Yes.
my personal page has more followers than Camp. um,
Hmm.
and but it's quality. It's like people that actually care about the content, because
Right.
they're creating content in some type of way. So I do also believe quality is important, but it's not just one thing. It's so much, and it can be really overwhelming. And if I could
Hmm.
do it all
Yes.
over again, I would not do it by myself. Absolutely not.
So, okay, so if you would not do it by yourself,
Yeah. I would have an
what
operations person, because
mhm,
I'm the creative mind, I'm the marketer, I'm the visual
mhm,
person, and the operations part, like figuring out growth hacks and strategy. Like, what do you want this thing to look like in 3 years, 6 months? Like, that is just, also, even if I was, that's too much for one person to have to take on.
right,
You
right,
know,
right,
in all the big tech companies, those that do really well have co-founders.
mhm,
And I think that's a model that all businesses should employ. Like, it's hard doing it by yourself. It's hard.
yes,
If I didn't have the marketing wherewithal, not sure where we would be.
interesting, okay,
Yeah. So,
okay,
yeah, if you could find a partner, even if it's a silent partner, just somebody that has your
mhm,
back and you can bounce ideas off of, and you can have real conversations about the business, and they are equally, maybe not even equally, but they're at least 40% invested, where you might be the other
right,
60,
right,
mentally, all of that, not just
mhm,
money.
mhm, right,
It will
exactly.
help. It will help.
Yeah, that helps a lot, and that's something, especially, as I go into these other ventures that I have with High Goddess. I didn't have partners
Okay.
or a co-founder, but in the new businesses that I have, I do have co-partners, because, like you said, it is very difficult to do a lot of it, on your own. Um, and also being able to build that community, because something that I'm thinking of, like I said, I didn't even think about, because I created High Goddess in 2013. So a lot of the grassroots things that I did to build that and to get that community going, I've kind of forgotten about it. And so I need the fresh perspective on, hey, do you remember that you did this?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I completely forgot
Yep.
that I did this.
Isn't
So
it crazy? Lamika, isn't it crazy when you look back? Like, I don't know how old you are, but I'll be 40 this year. And when you look back, it's like, yo, I did a lot of stuff and you just forget.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I was just recalling all the things that I did because I still work corporate.
Okay.
And at that time, which I still travel a lot, don't travel as much as I was when I first started High Goddess, but I was traveling and I would have at least 4 suitcases.
Wow.
One suitcase would be my, just my stuff. And then the other 3 would be my samples. It would be my fabric. It would be like, I would have all this stuff with me. Now that I think about it, I'm like, how did I do that? And I don't want to do that again. I don't even know how I can do that again. So I completely get that. Something else that you mentioned is that I was in watching your video, you was like, okay, this is a low cost industry, which piqued my interest because I was like, that's the reason. So I'm in, I've been in real estate for a few years, but I particularly specialize in mobile manufactured homes is what I specialize in.
Okay.
So I got into. You say
my
what?
aunt has a mobile manufactured home.
Yes. She's in Virginia. Oh yeah, that's perfect area. That Sunbelt area is the perfect area. And so I got into that piece of real estate because of the low barrier to entry from a money perspective. And I know on one of your videos you talked about how this wasn't, to get a studio started is not that expensive, but I think you said like $6,000 or something like that. You were able to get your studio started.
Okay, so we, I think all in, we were probably at about probably at about 13,000.
Okay.
And let me see. Well, no, let's just say even 20.
Okay.
Because if you've heard maybe the story, my landlord asked me to put down an additional 3 months of rent, which was like, girl, okay, but I did it. And then I budgeted $10K for the build out. A lot of the things that we didn't have to do, the kitchen was already state of the art and the bathroom was already beautiful because my landlord's father had it as his architectural company. He's an architect, so he used it as a showroom. So he made the bathroom and the kitchen top tier, which I didn't even know I needed a kitchen, right? It was like, oh, it's a kitchen. Wow, okay. But now I'm like, this kitchen has made the space a lot of money. And so yeah, 10K, I budgeted 10K for the build out. Was it 5K or was it 10K? I think it might have been, I don't remember, but I do have the spreadsheet. Like I literally could pull it up. Maybe when I do a clip, I'll link to the spreadsheet. But then we had to pay for paint. We had to do a little electrical because as a co-work space, we needed more outlets so people could plug in their computers. So we had electric, but I knew the people, like relationships. My interior designer, while we didn't know each other initially, we had a lot of mutual friends. And it was all people in our cohort. Like we all graduated around the same year in high school. We're all from the DMV, Prince George's County area. Like all of us just trying to build our thing. And we just all worked together. Now that I think about it, it's actually really beautiful how we came together in our own respective areas of expertise. And even if we didn't know each other directly, it was like that relationship. We all just kind of made it happen. And I never thought about it like that. But yeah, as long as you're not, so not always, but I suggest finding the smaller spaces in the community. I suggest going with the big commercial space companies, right? Because they are, obviously the rent's going to be higher. It's going to be like triple net, which means you're responsible for everything like outside of your space and in your space. Yes, they're going to give you TIA, which is tenant improvement allowance, but you got to pay that back. And there are other landlords, like smaller landlords, that do that. But
Mhm.
if my whatever you put in the space that you're leasing, let's say you get new floors, you get new all the things, drywall, lighting. If you're leasing it, you realize you can't take any of that with you.
At all.
So, you're gonna go in $50K to make a box look like something that I've seen people renting their space for $50 an hour, which also is crazy, ridiculous to me. You won't make any money like that. However, um, you put all this money in, that space you need to be working there full time in order to really keep the people coming in and be promoting.
Mhm.
So now
Mhm.
you got to add in your salary because you got to pay to live yourself, right? You still got bills, you still got rent, mortgage. So I say if you can keep if your properties that you own, put some sweat equity into that and make it simple. Keep it simple. Let your customer tell you what they want. Keep it simple. And then if somebody's like, I saw this greenery wall, I like that. Have you ever? Then consider it. But we're spending a lot of money up front and not being able to quantify it on the back end. And this
Okay.
is, in my opinion, if you're going the route of 1,000 to 1,700 square foot space in a commercial, not a commercial, in a suburban area, that's really, you're gonna make enough. I don't think it's replacing your income. I don't think
Right.
it's replacing your
Right.
9 to 5. Not if you're a
No.
professional like me and you.
Right.
No, this ain't. I don't think you're profiting enough to pay yourself 6 figures. That's
Right.
not the
Right.
business, but it absolutely can pay for itself. It's
Mhm.
absolutely an easy business to run where you don't have to be there. You don't.
Okay, that's what I want. I don't want to be there.
No. Now, you do need to know your business and you have to have systems in place so that
Mhm.
it can all be automated. But, I never forget, and I say this in my podcast, the first day we opened, I was just sitting there, doo-doo-doo, and my friend came over who owns a brick and mortar retail / barbershop. It's a hot spot, the Manifest in DC. And he was like, "Why are you in here, Patrice?" I was like, "Well, because if somebody wants to come by, then I need to be able to, He was like, "No, they need to book online, and you need to get a door, a code that you can manage on your phone and a camera."
Mhm.
I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, oops, who knew?"
That's true.
I ordered
That's
that stuff
true.
the next day. Okay. So yeah, it really can run itself. It's a part-time business that can run itself, that can bring in, a nice little license, some nice change. Now, when you want to start scaling and opening more than one,
Mhm.
then that's a
Mhm.
different conversation. But I would not spend $50,000,
Okay.
$75,000 to make it look pretty.
So there goes my idea, because my because my
That's why
I no, it makes sense, because since I found your channel, I had three options.
okay.
Okay. I have sold two of them, and one of them I have to tear down and start over.
Mm,
So my thought was I would build something out.
okay.
And so when I'm hearing you talk about it, I'm like, if I do a build out, we're talking about $50,000. So
But you
that's
own it.
not true.
That's the difference. That's the difference.
Okay.
You own the property, you own the real estate. So you can do whatever you want. If it could be a content studio tomorrow, and 6 months down the line, you say, you know what, let's just make this a house and rent this thing out.
That's
You can
true.
do whatever you want to do with it when you own it. But most of us are not owning the building. I don't own the building we're in. I have a great landlord and we renewed our lease and we're on the second round. But she's thinking of, I don't know if I'm going to renew the lease, but she's also considering selling it. So to put all that money in just is silly because it's not mine. But for
Got it.
you,
Okay, that makes sense. That
absolutely.
that makes sense. But your space, I saw the video of how there's like this window where
Mhm.
all this natural light comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Like you found an
It's a
amazing,
gym.
yes, you found an amazing space.
Yeah. God really. God was really looking out. He knew my heart with it, and because I I passed that place all the time because my son, we lived 5 minutes, 10 minutes away. The place I used to go for like meetings was across the street. The coffee place was down the street. Um, and where my son used to have baseball games was literally around the corner. So I would pass this place all the time, but it had the old company on it. And I'd be like, oh, that's nice, whatever. And then they actually called me. And that's kind of how it all started. So it was not at all in my plan. But as a co-work space, all of that stuff was fine, whatever. But when we pivoted to be a content studio, it's like it all made sense. Like, wow. So yeah. It's pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that is very cool. Now, what made you pivot to the content space?
For
How
sure.
long did it take you to pivot?
Yeah, so we opened in March of 2018. The pivot was announced in March of 2020, but I had already, right before the pandemic. I didn't know what was about to come, but I had already knew in my mind that in August 2019 that we were going to change. Real simple. We made $200 a month from a co-work member, but I was making $100 an hour from a content customer. It's a no-brainer.
No-brainer.
Yeah. So once I really realized that, and I say this often, I've told this story, Nipsey Hussle, he passed in March of 2019. And while I knew about him, I knew he also owned a co-work space, which I just thought was the coolest thing.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, called Vector 90. And then he passed, and then I just was like really hyper focused on learning about him and how everything was very vertically integrated. He was an independent artist, so he made money off the back of, he made all the money, like his sales, his album sales went to him, the royalties went to him. He had a clothing company, so in music videos and appearances, he was wearing his own clothes, which then people purchased. He had his own videographer and graphic designer, so he owned all of that content and was making money off of YouTube and the music streams, and it just all was connected. And I'm like, how do I connect this business? You make it a content studio, and then when people make content, you can take the content and use it to market what you're doing, what they're doing. So that's free advertising. I don't pay for photo shoots because the customers create the photos, and then I feature them, and then they reshare it because they're excited. I now have a podcast. I've had it for 3 years, but that podcast is created just to promote the space. I talk about all kind of stuff, but everything brings you back to camp. At some point, you're going to come to camp if you see that. Even from a YouTube standpoint, even from a merchandise standpoint, like courses, because I have a content studio, I now can teach a whole digital course, which is an entirely separate business, on opening a content studio. Much more vertically integrated, much more revenue streams that are possible in this way. And I didn't think about all of that back then when I was deciding to change, and also it was a really easy shift. It was literally just changing the messaging on the website, on the Instagram page. We did a brunch because I didn't change the decor at all. We added a green wall. We added that green wall, right? Like, I'm big on making things simple.
You're doing a good job. You're doing a real good job on making it simple.
We overthink stuff, and I can't say I didn't overthink things before. And I've had, my husband, love him, but he was like, what is a content studio? People don't know what that is. They're not gonna. And I was like, okay. Because worst case scenario, I could just make it back a co-work space. Like, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
But yeah, just try not to overthink it. And so we had a brunch. I invited all the local influencers to the space for a catered brunch, kind of announcing what we were doing. And this was, again, March of 2020, March 6th or something like that. And a week later, after that big announcement, the world shut down. Crazy.
Now you got to make a major pivot after that.
Yeah. I thought we were going to close. I was like, okay, well, I had some PR clients at the time, and they were what was able to pay the rent
Mm-hmm.
from their retainers because they stayed open during the pandemic. But for about 2 months, we were closed, and I resolved to, you know what? This was fun. What's next? Because I'm
Mm-hmm.
also really, I can let things go. Let it
Mm-hmm.
go. Nothing is forever. But so
That's a
the
whole word, and I received what you just said.
mm,
You have no idea what you just spoke to me. Okay,
let it go,
okay.
Lamika. Okay, okay. Um, and so then people realize that they've realized two things. You can't really create in your house. It's bad because our camp's customer has kids, has a full-time job, and you were getting claustrophobic having to stay
Mm-hmm.
at home. So you wanted
Mm-hmm.
to leave. You wanted a clean place. So that was the first thing. But then also, companies was creating even more content in the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
because everybody was taking it in. So now you really needed a space to do the things that was can't only one person can be in at a time.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's safe, right? Like people would say, what's your COVID protocol? We clean and disinfect after every
Which we
booking.
was
But
doing that anyway.
anyway, yeah, like literally doing that anyway. So there were really no changes from a safety standpoint. We added a box of masks
Mm-hmm.
and extra disinfectant, but we were doing that anyway from a cleanliness standpoint. So once people said, well, this is about to be it, we're gonna have to move around, it was up. And then it fell into the same, obviously, this is when George Floyd was murdered.
Mm-hmm.
And there was all of this attention on Black businesses, which is very interesting, separate conversation, but Black women benefited from that. Black men did not get any type of, it's very interesting. And I just kind of thought about that, but there was this push to support Black women owned businesses, Black owned businesses. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I'm about to put my name right in that hat. I started pitching myself. We had got coverage in a lot of different national publications as well as local publications. And yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is.
Unfortunate,
Yeah.
unfortunate
Yeah.
that it had to happen
Right.
on the back of his murder. Um, there are though a lot of Black businesses that totally benefited during that time.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that turned my wheels as to kind of why that is, but that
Mm,
makes total sense. But the benefit of the pandemic. So now that we're basically out of it. We're nowhere near where we were before.
mhm.
How has your business changed now that we're back outside again? How has your business changed from that?
It's not so much that we're back outside; it's that everybody has studios now.
Mm,
So, from a just being honest, I feel like I did my job. I feel like I've showed people how to do it, and I'm gonna now formalize the process with the Open a Content Studio community.
hmm.
But people have more options. People,
Right. Well,
people. Uh-huh.
I think what I like, what drew me to you, because I found a whole lot of other people,
Mm,
but what drew me to you was the fact that you have been through a cycle other than the pandemic. And
that's right.
so there are a lot of people that started their business during the pandemic. So they only know up. They don't
Yes,
know how to adjust to when it's just normal levels. And that's a part of what drew me to you.
absolutely. And that's so the ebbs and the flows are like so important. Um, because that's the life cycle of a business. Just like people have ups
Hmm.
and downs. You're gonna see my good, you're gonna see my bad. Same thing with businesses, right? Some months 14K, 15K easy.
Hmm.
Some months we're struggling to make rent. And these are the
Hmm.
things people don't talk about.
Hmm.
Um, but when that happens, what's the backup plan? What other
Yeah.
things, what other revenue streams can you put in play that can help buffer that? And so, like I said, I've noticed definitely, obviously, more spaces have opened up.
Okay.
Do I
Makes
think
total sense.
I'm gonna be honest? I don't think the time of entry has stopped. But and I will share this very honestly with the people who join the Open a Content Studio community. You need to act fast. Like if you're gonna do
Hmm.
this, you need to act fast and set your flag in
Hmm.
whatever you're gonna do. Because if you wait another year, somebody else is gonna open a space, and
Hmm.
then what's the point? And yes, every space can be different, but the reality is everybody is not a marketer. The reality
Right.
is everybody's not even a creator.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say you have to be to open a studio, but those things help. Because at the very
Mm-hmm.
least, you can be your own customer, right? Like
At the very
very
least, I
least,
can be my own
you can
customer.
be your
That's
own
true.
customer. So,
That is true.
and I think also the owners, it's becoming maybe more of an younger, immature, not immature, that's the wrong way to say. But you got younger people opening up spaces now,
And but that's gonna attract a different
Right.
audience than
Exactly.
what somebody is looking for. So that's perfectly fine. So for your open a content studio community, what does that look like? How does someone join? What are they going to learn
Yes.
by connecting with that community?
This was something that God told me in November of 2022 when I had COVID, and I waited. I waited 9 months to actually bring it to fruition. So again, don't wait. Don't wait. But it is a community, and I want to say it the right way because I like have it all mapped out or whatever. But it's essentially
That's good.
it's essentially me. We help owners, content studio owners, open, operate, and scale with education, resources, and community. So in 5.5 years, it'll be 6 years in March, I've owned the space. But for 10 years before that, I was a marketer. I still am. I'm director of marketing and communications for a mega church. And I just know a lot. And I see so many people wanting to do it, but just not knowing where to start. And so the first step is to go to openacontentstudio.com, openacontentstudio.com. Give us your name and email address so you can be on the email list. That's first and foremost. But also, we have a ton of videos on YouTube, Open a Content Studio. Just type that in, and all the videos will show up. Going to be adding more content to that. Going to be doing a webinar. I don't know when this will come out, but there's a webinar happening early November 2023, which is free. We're going to talk about the do's and don'ts of owning a content studio. Anybody can join. And then I'm going to release a course at some point. My vision is to, from a social standpoint, I want to feature studios all the time. Every week, I want to feature a new studio on the page, on YouTube. I would love for there to be events. I'm building this out as I go and really taking one step at a time because I have the tendency to want to go in 2027. I want right now, I just want to get to December 9th, which is my birthday.
Well, happy birthday. You and my sister are, oh my God, you and my sister are 2 days apart. Are you turning 40 or you're turning?
I'm turning 40.
She's turning 40 on December 7th.
Oh my God. Hey,
that is so cool.
That's cool.
That is so cool. That's what's
I
up.
love that.
Yeah, that may
and there's no cost to join the community. Like I said, go to openacontentstudio.com, put in your email, give us your name. We're sending out tips. There's a survey that I'm trying to get as much information as possible from members of the community. Where are you in your content studio process? What do you need most? Are you doing this by yourself? Like those very important avatar questions to help me decide what y'all need.
Got it. So you're building the community first, but your course isn't ready yet.
Absolutely not.
Got it. Okay.
But there will be. The webinar is, again, I don't know when this interview is coming out. The webinar is happening. So if you follow us on Instagram at Open a Content Studio, you'll see the promo on there and everything.
Okay, well, she will be signing up for the email list because I'll be there. I will be there because I'm determining. I'm like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I do this? Should I not do this? I don't know.
You're in a great space because you own the property. I think your conversation, it's a house?
Yeah, it is a house. That's what I was saying. I have several options. It is a house, but I also have some land that what I want to put on there is a container. and I want to build it out as a container content studio. Is what I want to do.
I love that. I love that so much. I want a container in our backyard, and I've thought about that same thing, either container or an Airstream.
Yes, I already have. See, this is the problem. I just collect this stuff. Me and my sister, we will have an idea, and we are in the process of making a mobile bar.
Where are you?
That
What
is
city
in the.
are you in?
I live in Dallas, but I'm originally from Alabama, so I go back and forth between Alabama and Dallas all the time.
Okay.
So I basically live in both places.
Gotcha.
But at one of my homes in Alabama, I have a camper in the back that was at my other sister's house in her yard. And my one sister was like, yeah, I'm looking for a camper because I want to have a mobile bar. And so she had me looking for it. I go to my other sister's house and I'm like, hey,
there's the camper.
What's that? And she is like, get it. Her husband is like, no, that's mine. She's like, no, get it out my yard.
Yeah.
Get it out. You can have it. So we took that and we have gutted it. And that's content that I shot in like 21 that I have not even put out there yet.
Are you
we're still working. Yes. Because we're still working on it. And we're still working on it. So I haven't released that content. But yeah, so it's not an Airstream, but it is a camper that we have gutted. And the goal was to turn it, or we're in the process of turning it into a mobile bar. But as I was thinking through like a cost standpoint, I was like, maybe I could turn my content into having like an Airstream or doing it that way first, because my cost wouldn't be as much. I don't know. I'm just trying stuff at this point.
But I think that is so cool. I'm really intrigued, and let's definitely keep in touch after this. But I think where the industry is going is less of because now when I see spaces open, they all kind of look like my space. It's like either they're like this or they're like like pinks and all that stuff. I think the space is moving towards these unique experiences. Like when you go on Airbnb and you see the Airstream or the tree house, those are the unique experiences that have a higher price point. So I believe that when you have a studio that is different, people will not only want to use it, but they'll go out their way to create there, because it's like, okay, you don't know where this is, but I do. You know what I'm saying? So
yes,
I think you could go great either way. That is so cool. Could it be both? Yeah. Could it be the mobile bar on like weekends, Friday nights?
Yeah, you know, actually it could. Yeah, it could totally be that way. Yeah, it could totally be that way.
And the other thing I would suggest is you say you have a ton of content from the build out. I would just go ahead and commit to releasing that on a consistent basis. Let me tell you why. Because people are going to find it and be intrigued, and they're going to push you to finish and get it done. Nobody's rushing you. They're not like, ain't she not open yet? Nobody's like that. If you keep them engaged, they're going to just stay engaged and just want to watch. They just want to watch the process. I sometimes, like this Sunday, I don't have anything to do. Me and my husband are probably going to be at home on YouTube looking at people building their homes. I spent 2 hours watching this white boy in Canada or Seattle build a container home. And he decked that thing out. Yes. And it's on YouTube. And so now what did I do? I went to Airbnb and looked it up. And it's like bookmark, because at some point when I'm on that side of the country, I want to stay there. So, and this was a 2-year process of him collecting that, content and putting it all together. But he was sharing the story the whole time. And all right. Yeah, so we need to talk.
All right. Yes, we do. I'm gonna get. Yeah, I was looking at that. I was telling my sister, it's like I have all this content in my phone from this. But see, that goes back to my fruition factor with that camper ain't that high. So I'm like, I gotta keep it. It ain't ready yet, so I don't want to put it out. But now that I'm thinking through it, it shows that hey, I started down the road in this project. It's taking much longer than what I thought.
That's part of the story. That's part of the story.
Yeah, you're right.
You're human.
Okay. No. Yeah.
I love say that. Do it. I think it's cool to have sisters doing it together.
Yes, it's fun. Yeah, it's totally fun. I so appreciate this, guys. Like totally, I reached out to Patrice and she said yes to it. Now the one question that I always like to ask people, and that question is, first of all, I think you have a high fruition factor. Do you think you have a high fruition factor?
Yes. When I think about fruition, I think about making things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I guess the new word is manifest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do. Anything I say is mine. Now, it might not come when I want it, but it's I have a very clear vision for the next 12 months of my life. I'm not focusing on
That's
it
awesome.
all, but I know
Right.
I know what God wants me to do and who he wants me to be. And
That's awesome.
I believe that I can make anything happen.
That's
Now,
awesome.
I do think you have to be real clear on the outside influences that are in your life, because those
Mm-hmm.
will, the distractions, the mental, like all that stuff plays a role, and that could be
Mm-hmm.
your de facto low.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I do believe I do. I think this conversation speaks to that. I learned
Yes.
so much about you, and this space is allowed me to talk about my industry in ways I hadn't talked about it before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. I'm excited. I am so I'm proud of myself for reaching out.
I'm proud of you
I'm proud
too.
of myself for reaching out.
Yes,
So before we go, tell the audience how they can find you and how they can connect with you.
absolutely. I'm just Patrice Cameau, first name, last name on everything. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, not so. If you put my name, it'll come up, but my YouTube is
Mm-hmm.
actually my podcast. I also have a podcast called Shades of Content that teaches content marketing and contentment hacks to Black millennial mompreneurs. Like I said before, I'm married. I have 3 children, ages 16, 6, and 4. I own a business. I work a full-time job, full time, very demanding. And I also like to work out. I like to work out often. I love great experiences. And I think life is not always going to be about balance, but you have to know what things bring you peace and satisfaction, even when things are crazy. So that's what I talk about on the podcast. But just look me up, Patrice Cameau. If you look up Patrice Cameau on Instagram, you'll find everything you need.
That's what's up. I love it. Again, Patrice, thank you so much for saying yes to being on the Fruition Factor podcast. I appreciate it. Guys, I brought you another dope Black female entrepreneur, and I am excited about it. Okay.
Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely. So, y'all share this episode with somebody who wants to open a content studio, or even if they don't. She dropped some gems on how to get your fruition factor high. And I appreciate you for coming on. And until the next time,